Hello days, pleasant nights, and welcome to Kingslingers, a Doof Media podcast journeying through Stephen King's Dark Tower series and beyond. I am your host, constant reader Scott Daly, and joining me, as always, he's awake now, but we'll need to drown him back to sleep. It's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
I'm back. You've woken me up. Or yeah, I'm good. I'm good now.
What I wanted to do. Oh, you're just asleep now? Okay. Good job, me. This week on our 8-part series covering Stephen King's Duma Key continues with part 5. We'll be chatting about chapters 13 through 14 of the book. Edgar's art show is finally here, and it goes great. Well, except for when old Miss Elizabeth Eastlake dies in the middle of it. It seems like Edgar's happy times in Duma Key are over, Matt, as we begin to move into the climax of the novel. The picture of his future is very, what's the word I'm looking for? Red. Matt, what did you think of this week's reading?
I love it. Yes, it was a wonderful showing, except for the death. Yeah. It was, we've been building up to this art show for so long. I felt just a ton of like narrative weight writing on this, and it was very satisfying. So many moments we've been waiting for. It really does feel like a sort of high point of the story. I mean, I partly say that because I think we know that things are going downhill from now, but also just, I mean, from an enjoyability standpoint, it was a high point of the story. Like, it was just a engaging, entertaining, it was very sweet. I think I was trying to find the right word. It's like, it's very sweet and satisfying to watch Edgar finally experience the kind of rewards that we feel like he's earned throughout this book. And we've watched this guy suffer, we've watched this guy struggle, we've watched him find his feet, and now he's kind of getting a little party thrown for himself to celebrate his his new life.
Yeah, and it all goes really well. I mean, besides that, Mrs. Lincoln, like it does. Like I do appreciate that the book gives us a chance to just kind of relish in his happy moments at the very beginning of this week's reading. There is, basically chapter 13 starts with Edgar being like, "This was the last time I was happy," and instead of just saying that and then moving on to the sad parts, it allows us to exist in that happy moment and be like, "Yeah, I'm happy too." Because you're absolutely right. Like, King has taken a lot of time and effort to really make us like this guy. This is not like one of his characters where, oh god, this guy's an asshole, but I still kind of like him for some reason. No, this is a nice guy. He's a guy that deserves happiness, and we're getting to see it happen for him. And it's very fulfilling as a reader. But then of course, this is still a story, it's still a book, and it has to have the turn, and we start moving towards that turn big time by the end of this week's reading.
Yeah. I will say, by him telling us, this is the last time I was happy, etc., it does put this pall of anxiety and dread over the whole event.
Sure.
So it's not purely a delight, right? Like, I mean, every time he says something nice about Ilse, you're like, oh god, oh no. and that's even before he just kind of straight out tells us that she's a goner. And I think that's really interesting because it does kind of distort your enjoyment of the scene, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like one way to make me really mad at a book is to give me like a really happy scene and then, kill someone like spontaneously with no warning. Because then you're just like, well, like that, it feels cheap, right? It feels cheap when you do that narratively. So I don't know. It's just interesting. I'm just kind of weighing the pros and cons of doing it this way in my head, and I think this was the wise choice, actually.
Yeah. No, definitely, and I think we'll get into that in a lot more detail as we go through this week for sure. But I agree with you. I mean, it's kind of designed to be this moment of happiness with this background of dread, and that makes it gives you this anxiety and this tension throughout it. But I think it also makes you kind of appreciate the moments even more. Like, again, this is a story written from a very wistful, 4 years removed Edgar, who, as you said, is remembering his daughter that we are textually told this week he will never see again after the moments of these chapters. And so he's remembering her, he's remembering these experiences, and so it almost makes them more warm and cozy and good feeling, because he's remembering it so fondly, because it is the last moment he was happy.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
All right, let's get into it, though. We got a bunch to talk about. Quick announcement before we do. Matt talked about this last week, but he was wrong because it didn't come out till this week. Our new episode of Castle Talk is out right now. If you are a patron, head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia, and you can see the episode covering episodes 5 and 6 of the Castle Rock television show, currently streaming on Hulu. Matt and I have been working through this 2 episodes at a time, and our latest episode is out now. An episode that I think we were both pretty mixed on altogether. These 2 episodes are definitely the most negative we've been towards the show, for sure.
These were the least best episodes.
Yes, there you go. That's a good way of putting it.
We didn't hate them, though.
No, we didn't. Check that out. It's been a lot of fun talking about Castle Rock. I've really been enjoying this. So hope you folks, if you're a patron, hope you're listening to it. If you're not yet, now would be a great time. We've got 3 episodes, probably about 4 almost 4 hours of content on Castle Rock so far. And we've still got a lot more to go.
Yeah. And of course, countless hours of previous King adaptation discussions.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Matt, let's get into it. Chapter 13, titled The Show. And as we said a couple minutes ago, if there was any doubt as to the direction this book was going to head from here, we get this opening to chapter 13. Someday, if your life is long and your thinking machinery stays in gear, you'll live to remember the last good thing that ever happened to you. That's not pessimism talking, just logic. I hope I haven't run out of good things yet. There would be no purpose in living if I believed I had. But it's been a long time between. I remember the last one clearly. It happened a little over 4 years ago on the evening of April 15th at the Scoto Gallery. It was between 7:45 and 8 o'clock, and the shadows on Palm Avenue were beginning to take on the first faint tingings of blue. I love this so much. You know, it does everything we were just talking about. It does, but like, I love just like the general horror of the truth of like, one day that something good that happens to you will be the last good thing that ever happens to you. Like, that's true for literally everybody.
Yeah.
We don't always get to realize that at the time. But Edgar, having everything he's gone through with this novel, which again, we still don't know the details of it, is able to look back at this time and say, yep, that was it. That was the last time something good happened to me.
I had to like pause and sort of metabolize this and think about some way to deal with this inevitability, so that I'm ready, you know?
Sure.
So that I'm ready for when I'm 80 years old and I'm like, was that it? Was that the last good thing? And like, yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely, I mean, he's right. It's logically true. Although, I wonder if it doesn't also just reflect what a sad sack he is at the present day or future or whatever word we're going to use to index like the point of view from which he's telling the story.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It does paint a picture of a guy who's not in a great place, and I think that aligns with what we've seen from when the present day version of Edgar interjects into the story more directly. I do think this line is interesting, though. I hope I haven't run out of good things yet. There would be no purpose in living if I believed I had, but it's been a long time between. You know, that speaks of a person who is not in a great place, but has not given up on life, right? Like, he's not telling this story as like this is the story of the last time I was happy and I'm ready to say goodbye now. That's not what this is. And I think that's interesting.
I agree. And I cottoned on to that. And I was trying to think like, well, what does that mean? Like, does that mean that there's some victory is eked out such that he can still feel happy? I don't know. It's very, I caught what you're pointing out here. And I was like, huh. So
yeah, I mean, we know very little about present day Edgar and what he's doing, right? We know he's in Mexico, in which he's calling his third life. So he leaves Duma Key behind. He doesn't head back home to the north. He heads to Mexico. Is he with Wireman? We don't know. So that we know very little. So yeah, we have to kind of guess and speculate on why 4 years later he's looking back on this time. Why now, right? I mean, that's a valid question too that we maybe won't ever get answered. Maybe the framing of this narrative will never be filled out sufficiently for us to get answers to those questions. But it's fun to think about. Sure.
Yeah, I guess just to put a fine point on it, like if nothing good has happened to you in 4 years, what is it about your situation that makes you feel like, well, something good still might happen? It's like, I don't know, man, you're on a pretty bad streak there. Maybe you're just an optimist, Edgar. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Just thinking.
I mean, if what happens to him, that what's hinted that might happen to him this week actually happens to him, you got to be a pretty fucking big optimist. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
So we meet up with Edgar here, Matt, as his show is about to open. He's nervously waiting for his family to show up as people continuously come up and talk to him. I do love this beat, Matt, where we get to see that people are in awe of Edgar, but also a little afraid of him, as perhaps they should be, right? I think that's the one thing we've been talking about throughout the course of this book is kind of the duology of the dichotomy of creation of art as this thing that is incredibly beautiful but also incredibly scary. And here we have this guy who's incredibly talented, and that talent is awesome, but it's also a little frightening as well.
Yeah. I honestly wonder how much of this section is autobiographical on King's part. Because you just imagine like 95% of the interactions that King has outside of his home must take this general shape, you know?
Yeah. Well, people like, especially when you work in horror, right? Like this constant question of like, hey, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Well,
like I've been playing Elden Ring a lot lately, and like the constant refrain in my head as I played this game is like, what is wrong with the people that came up with the designs of some of these monsters? That's like the scariest shit in the world. Like, how do you close your eyes and see that thing? And I think that's the same thing that people, think about King a lot and ask him about, I think, as well.
Let's see how many times we can reference Elden Ring this episode. Yeah, I mean, so there's the element of him being, famous, and so people kind of approach him with this reverence and this sense of distance, which I think also shows up here a bit. Like, oh, it's Edgar Fremantle, the amazing artist. He's again not just the horror, but like, oh, he's different from us. He's a creative. He's a creative genius. He can do things you can't do. He's not like you. I think. I mean, I'm guessing, obviously, but I feel like a lot of people probably bring that baggage with them into any interaction with Stephen King. So I'm just guessing that he's channeling some of his own experiences with the public when he writes this gallery scene.
Yeah, and I do think he really sees himself as similar to an Edgar type, right? Like, which is ironic because he's not been like the blue collar, down to earth guy for so long. But he sees himself as that still in the way these interactions. I don't think he likes being like fawned over or awed. Like, I don't think he likes that kind of stuff. And so he sees himself as this Edgar as this guy who is kind of still not new to the world, is new to this world is not right, because King is obviously not new to this world at all, but just feeling out of place in this world of people that like just want to surround him and talk about how amazing he is. It just, he's never been comfortable in that. So I think Edgar is certainly not at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's interesting because that Edgar has been, I think, financially comfortable for some time.
Yeah.
Like King, but I do see the differences you're pointing out.
I mean, we're getting so many King parallels here between Edgar and himself, and I think that's really interesting because there was an opportunity to make Edgar like someone who was well versed in storytelling and art and creation, but King specifically didn't do that. Right? He's a construction guy. He's a blue collar guy that started his own business and got rich off that, and then late in his life he switched to this entirely new field, and that's not really King at all. But I can see the allure of, I want to explore the act of creation from a person who has jumped headlong into it late in their life. It just seems like that is not the part that's autobiographical, I think. But it is something that I understand why it really interested him.
Well, yeah, I like you pointing that out, actually, because I think the thing about Edgar that has come into focus, especially this week and last week, is that he's this intuitive, he's this like natural, he's in touch with a muse. He's literally in touch with a muse. I mean, there's probably an actual creature that is his muse, in some supernatural sense.
Sure.
And King, I think he does see his own creativity that way, or at least he talks about it that way.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's interesting because with King, there's always this like mysticism around creativity coupled with this extreme pragmatism
Yeah.
around like you have to sit in the chair and actually put the words on the page every day. And I think that's an interesting thing about him. I think that's kind of something that Edgar has too. You know, Edgar has the
Yeah.
work ethic.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, and I don't want to. We've been straying. I think I've been listening back to our episodes, and we're straying into autobiographical talk almost too much because it's all supposition, and we really have no idea. But like one of the things that interests me so much about this novel is that it as we said at the beginning, it is a post crash novel for King, and so I do wonder if he creates this character that is entirely new to the act of creation and new to this world, and I wonder if at times when he picked up the pen again and started writing again, if he felt like he had changed so much that he felt like he was having to redo this and relearn it. Perhaps I don't know, but just fun to think about.
Yeah. I mean, I guess On Writing came out well before this book did. I was
It
trying to figure out.
did, but like he On Writing was a book he was working on when the accident happened, so like he wasn't quite finished with it yet. He was almost finished with it. The accident happened, and then he kind of to put the finishing touches on it post accident.
Yeah, because I remember it having a bunch of references to the accident in the the book, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I
it
was
was
just
published in 2000, so like he recovered incredibly quickly. From June 1999, On Writing was published the next year. And so yeah, he was almost done with it. He definitely added stuff to the accent. I think he probably I'm trying to remember. I think it was less memoir in the first reading, and more just like a how-to thing. And then post accident, he leaned into the memoir bit a little bit more and made it like basically half and half.
Yeah. I was just trying to figure out like was he writing these things at the same time, and thus the ideas might be mixed, and the answer is no.
But again, like my favorite part about this is him on reflection of this time in his life, the immediate post accident time. Years later is him reflecting on that.
True.
Which is exactly what Edgar's doing here. Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Matt, something I just wanted to mention here, as people continually call Edgar Mr. Fremantle over and over again early in this chapter, we've seen a few posts and emails and comments from people about Edgar's last name and how he shares this last name with Mother Abigail from The Stand, which is true. They are both Fremantles. I guess people have been saying like, why haven't we been talking about this? Doesn't that mean they're related in some way? I don't know. I just wanted to bring this up and get your opinion on this, Matt. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know what to make of it if they are related. Like, I can't really think of a clear connection. There's certain connections, like, well, they both kind of have the shine. There's really no religious subtext with Edgar's story. There's really no artistic subtext with Abigail's story. They're very, very different stories, really. I'm having a really hard time thinking about anything that would link The Stand with Duma Key. So yeah, I mean, it's possible, right? It's possible they're related, but I almost just don't think there's an intentional connection there.
I mean, King just likes to use names over and over again, like that. I think that's a truth that we've talked about for a while, and it's mostly first names. I mean, just this week, like we see Edgar, his wife calls him Eddie, which is like, of course, Eddie is short for Edgar as well as Edward. But I don't know if we'd seen him called Eddie in this book yet. But so he likes to reuse names. King does. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't think Edgar is black. He could be. I don't specifically remember if he was ever described. His skin color was described. But I also think Stephen King, bless his heart, if he doesn't tell you a character's skin color, they're white. Like it's his default. It's his character's defaults. Like, I think one thing is true. As much as he means well, if King makes a black character in a story, he definitely lets you know they're black. He talks about their skin color quite a bit. So I don't think Edgar's black, which I mean doesn't mean he's not related to Abigail Fremantle in some way, but I think it's just a name. I really do in this case. Like that's a boring answer, and that's why I hadn't brought it up. I don't think there's any relation. I mean, it's fun to speculate, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I kind of thought about it and then forgot about it a long time ago. But maybe something else will crop up, and then we'll have to talk about it.
I just feel like if he wanted us to see the connection, he would make it very, 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 very obvious.
Yeah,
and it's not there, at least not yet, right?
True.
So at last, Edgar's family arrives at the show, and it is really this beautiful moment, Matt. But you can also kind of hilariously tell that Ilse is definitely his favorite. Like he sees his eldest daughter, he sees his wife, and then he sees Ilse, and like the time stops, and we get, I was aware of an immense, almost overpowering love for her, and gratitude that she felt the same for me. It was in her eyes. Then I was holding her. And then, of course, his other daughter comes over to him, and we get this lovely line here. I didn't have an arm for her and her sister both, but she had one for me, which is just like the perfect image of Edgar and his relationship with his two daughters, right? Like,
yeah.
he love them both? Sure, absolutely. But he only has enough love for one of them, and their relationship is basically required for Linny to pick that up and hug him because he doesn't have the arm to hug her. It's like this wonderful, wonderful image that I laughed at. I laughed at it.
Yeah, it's just a wonderful, show don't tell, visceral, physical way of showing this. Yeah, and I also think it's interesting. We spend a lot of time on this beat, on this idea in this week's reading, and it made me think a bit about like, why is it this way? And I think part of the key is right there in that first sentence you read. The gratitude that she felt the same for me. He loves her, and he can see that she loves him. And I mean, this is going to sound maybe more cynical than I mean it to be, but it's like maybe part of the reason why he loves this daughter more than the other is that this is the daughter who clearly loves him the most. and that is that's appealing, right?
Sure.
It's foolish to pretend that it doesn't feel nice when somebody clearly loves you and has an enormous affection for you. It makes you like them back almost irresistibly.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much of this beat, I feel like it gets brought up a couple times, the idea that kind of what he likes about Elsa, not everything he likes about her, but a lot of what he likes about her is how much she loves him and how much she adores him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Which is not fair to his other daughter at all. But that's the way it is for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, like we talked about in the intro, though, this is just delightful. Like seeing Edgar's happiness, seeing just the joy of all these people came out here for me. All these people at my life that were there for me at my lowest point are now getting to see me at my highest. And just like him reflecting on how quickly this has happened. He went from this person who was ready to commit suicide a few months ago, and now is just the center of attention in this beautiful way. You just can't help but be happy for him, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it really impacts the overall feel of the book that we get these bits of happiness, particularly this scene, as we talked about at the beginning of the episode. We really get to dwell in this prolonged scene where he's actually happy. And I was thinking about how, this is, I kind of see it as a weakness of Gothic tales, speaking broadly, that they never really give you that reprieve. I say never as if I've read every Gothic story. I'm just saying it's a systematic failure of a certain type of story where there's like a very dreary tone. If you don't give us a break from that dreariness, that morose wallowing in misery to feel something good, then you can't manipulate our emotions. We just become bored.
Yeah.
And I wonder if King was sort of almost reacting to that in including this lengthy scene where a character actually gets to be happy and saying like, okay, in order to really bring him down, I've got to bring him up first.
Yeah, you definitely need that. Like it won't work as well if you don't have a sense of what he's about to lose. Like this is what he's about to lose right here, and it makes the sad part sadder for sure.
Yeah.
So Melinda and her boyfriend give Edgar his promised beret, and I just love this. I took it out of the box and held it up. The audience oohed appreciatively. Melinda and Rick looked at each other happily, and Pam, who felt Lynn had somehow never got her proper share of affection or approval from me, and she was probably right, gave me a look that was positively radiant. So here it is again, Matt. Another little beat. We've been talking about this throughout the entire book. Another little beat that Edgar has been a shitty dad to his eldest daughter, and he doesn't deny it here. In fact, he accepts it, and that and this is part of what endears you so much about Edgar is like he's not denying this. This isn't like Pam was always on my ass about I'm not loving my daughter enough. It's like no, like now looking back on it, she probably had a point. That makes you like him.
Yeah, I agree. And also, I mean, I like the fact that he is so. I guess generous about this beret because like the beret is it's kind of silly, right? It's kind of it's almost a joke gift. Yeah. But Edgar, I think it shows that he's a good dad, that he, takes this beret and puts on the beret. Like he's not taking himself too seriously. You can imagine like the asshole version of this character would have been like, I don't know, insulted or taken the beret but not actually worn the beret.
Yeah.
But he actually puts it on, which everybody knows that it's a silly affectation, but he's more than happy to sort of be silly if it makes his daughter happy.
Well, it is a silly affectation, but it's also a really nice like velvet beret. Like they did this joke thing, but they spent good money on the joke because they like it's one of those things that like it's adorable and cute because of the inside joke, but it actually has great meaning behind it when you turn the joke into something serious, and everyone is acknowledging that kind of simultaneously without saying anything.
Yeah, I like that.
So Edgar tours his family around the gallery, showing them his artwork, but he is called into the back office by Dario. And before we move on to that, I just had a couple quotes here. I just wanted to ping off you real quick. Lenny is looking at his artwork and she says to him, "How can you have something this big inside you and not know?" And I love that feeling, right? Of like that is what we were talking about, the awe that people feel towards Stephen King. Like I don't understand how this could come from inside you, and furthermore how you could carry that with you your entire life and just not know about it. I love that quote.
Yeah, me too. I definitely feel like that's at least a tad autobiographical. But then also maybe we all kind of feel like that sometimes. Like we're not all world-renowned artists, but we all stumble across talents, right, at some point. And then we can feel like, wow, where'd that come from?
Yeah. It is a mystery of how this stuff comes about. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to talk to you about this Pam jab, Matt, because I'm always on the lookout for Pam quotes. I'm going to go ahead and tell you this now because we're getting close to the end of the book. I've never thought about Pam as much as for this podcast. Ever. When I first read the book, I was just like, "Oh, this lady, she's kind of annoying," and that's really it. But we've just become Pam Watch 2024 here, and it's been delightful.
It's a funny artifact of our whole podcast process that if there's a character who's kind of shitty but maybe has some good qualities, we end up really drilling down on those good qualities and coming up with like a really complicated, like, what is the author doing with this character? I don't think we're wrong. I just think it's interesting how I think you and I are attracted to that ambiguity.
Yeah.
We both like talking about characters who are ambiguous in that way. And so we get drawn into it, and we're going to keep doing it. So, deal with it.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. But this week's Pam moment is a little passive aggressive jab of as Edgar is getting called away. Pam says, "Go on, Edgar. I'm used to him being called away. When we were married, it was a way of life." So I think that's a fun one because it's doing double duty. It's simultaneously her just needing to get her jabs in, but also it is continuing to help us paint this picture. Whether or not she's 100% accurate in that image of what their marriage was like. This is the way she feels. So she feels like she was kind of second place to everything else in Edgar's life.
And if I'm not mistaken, he just kind of lets that slide. He doesn't even think about it, right?
Yeah. All right, Matt. Dario called him back to tell him that the show is a hit. In fact, it's a sell, which I didn't even know that was a term. Is that a term?
It's one of those things where as soon as you hear it, you're like, yeah, sure. That's definitely a term, but
Yeah.
I don't think I ever heard it used before.
It's a sell, meaning that all the paintings for sale have been sold. 30 paintings and 14 sketches all sold, fetching just a little bit over $500,000. They toast to the start of Edgar's fantastic career, which Edgar also tells us in this moment is also the end of his career.
Yeah. Yep. So you and I were joking around earlier. I was joking. I was saying I would be so mad
Yeah.
somebody sold 30 of my paintings in like half a day, because what that actually means is they didn't price the paintings correctly. They should have priced them way higher, and then maybe they would have only sold 2/3 of them or whatever, and we could increase the price for the remaining ones and sell them over a period of time. The truth is, I have no idea how pricing of artwork actually works, and it sounds like it must be very complicated because it's not like these goods are commodities in any sense. So, for all I know, this is exactly how it works. I just thought it was kind of funny that as a like my personal reaction would be like, you already sold it? What?
Yeah.
Damn it.
We recorded last week's episode on a Monday night, and Tuesday morning
Uh-huh.
at like 8 a.m. you come
Uh-huh.
at me with like, "Oh, I'll be calling my lawyer because you failed to sell my art for what it was actually worth." I was like, "Whoa, Matt, it's way too early for this."
Yeah, that did
Um,
happen.
yeah, I mean, I have no idea how this world works. Like, I don't even know how you price it, like, at all. Like you know, they say if you had sold Girl and Ship 8, it would have gone for $100 million. And then his assistant says, "No, double that." And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What are you setting the price at if one of you says one price and the other says, no, actually, I think it's $100,000 more than the price you
Yeah.
just said. Like, who is deciding on I have no idea how any of
Right.
this works.
Like who's the buyer you have in mind for this? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, since as far as I know, it wasn't an auction. It was just like they have a
Yeah.
price and then
Yeah.
somebody pays the price. So to my mind, again, I know nothing about this actually, but to my mind, if you were trying to find like the actual market value of an artist's work, you would have to do an auction at some point and
Hmm.
see where people kind of break, and then you say, okay, that's what this artist's works go for.
Hmm.
Other than that, it's like, yeah, you're just making up a number.
Yeah, and I think when you were whining to me on at Tuesday at 8 o'clock in the morning, like you brought up a point, which is like, this show is a hit, and the art immediately becomes worth more than it was that day, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so the reviews for the show come out, and every piece jumps up in value by a measurable amount. So like. In our mind, the logic is like, well, maybe we hold some of the pieces back and then sell them 2 days after the show, and then get more money. But I do think, to be fair to our art connoisseurs in the book here, like he painted like 30 paintings in a month, and so they're
uh,
probably like, oh, he could just do more because he,
yeah,
he churns them out really, really quickly. So yeah, I don't know. As you've already admitted, we have no idea how any of this stuff works. So it's just fun to think about.
yeah. True.
So the Edgar then chats with Pam, who is looking at the Girl and Ship series. Matt, Pam does not like these paintings at all. And she can also tell that the girl in the rowboat in many of them is clearly Ilse. But there's an interesting little beat here, Matt, where some of the clothes Ilse is wearing in the later pictures in the series is a green dress that she only just ordered just this spring, not too long ago, in a way that there's no way Edgar could have seen this dress before painting it onto this little girl in this rowboat.
Yeah. So to me, that fact is less surprising than the fact that Edgar doesn't really seem to have thought too hard about the fact that the girl in the boat is obviously Ilse. Like, Pam is bringing it up to him, and it's not like he's never realized it. But
Yeah, he points it out like in the first ones, right? Like the
yeah,
when he first starts painting it, he's like, it's kind of like Reba, my doll. It's kind of like Ilse. He's just non-committal to that. He's just painting his daughter.
I guess exactly, non-committal is a perfect word, and like he's never thought about it with any seriousness and asked himself like, why is it her? Like, am I making it Elsa on purpose, or
Hmm.
is this more, magical prophecy stuff? I guess fundamentally the thing that bugs me is like he's never thought to himself like, hey, sometimes I draw these like magical paintings that have secret messages in them. I seem to be repeatedly drawing my daughter drifting toward the death boat. Why would that be? And he never
Hmm.
really, and I don't know, I don't just want to say like, oh, he's stupid and Stephen King made a mistake. I want to be like, maybe this is just like his relationship with his art is it just kind of comes out of him, and he's not super analytical about it.
Yeah.
I think that's true. Actually, he's just not super analytical about his own art.
Well, when Elizabeth takes a look at them later in the chapter, like pointing out the faces in the water in the wake of the boat, pointing out the knickknacks on the uh, bow of the boat, that some of them are things that he recognizes from his life, like he sees the bike the little girl from the beginning of the story had when her dog Gandalf was run over.
Yeah,
Like, this is stuff that he's obviously never noticed before. He's not really even looked. Like, again, when we first saw Ghost in Ship 8, the book did not describe the picture to us. It didn't. This when Elizabeth looks at it is the first time that we get it described to us, and I think the reason for that is just simply because it's the first time Edgar's really looked at them, like
yeah,
until he sees them through the eyes of the other people looking at them. He's never really looked at them in this way.
yeah.
And I do wonder, like, if you can construct a metaphor about like seeing the art you created. You can't really truly see it until you're starting to see it through the eyes of the people that are consuming it. I think there's something interesting there.
Yeah, I agree. I was just going to say, like, this also exists in writing, where
Mm-hmm.
you don't see what you put into it. You only see what you put into it on purpose,
Yeah, yeah.
which is actually not. Yeah, I mean, then you end up throwing your first draft in the trash, and your wife fishes it out and says you should base your entire career on this book.
Why won't my wife do that? Oh wait, because I haven't written anything. I have to write the thing to throw in the trash first. That's what
That's
it is.
true.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah, do that.
Um. So from here we move to this moment. Like, Edgar's talking about how uncomfortable Pam is, and we get this quote. And in a way, I was surprised that perplexity and disquiet were all Pam felt. But of course, the paintings hadn't had a chance to work on her yet. What does that mean?
I don't really know, actually. I don't actually know. like because it is kind of ambiguous to what degree does Edgar realize that his paintings are like necromantic
Hmm.
versus just creepy.
Yeah,
um
yeah,
I don't, it's unclear to me, and I guess we'll see.
yeah. We will. One thing missing, though, in this whole exchange, Matt, is Wireman. Wireman and Jack are nowhere to be found. Edgar is kind of nervously waiting for them to show up the entire time. And finally, they arrive, and the explanation for their tardiness is given to us because Elizabeth Eastlake herself has come. It's a marvelous surprise, and it stuns the entire gallery.
Yeah, I really enjoy the impact of how her presence is conveyed in this scene.
Yeah, yeah, it's really great. Like, I love even the idea that like the people who didn't even know who she was just felt, oh, this is an important person. I got to get out of the way.
Yeah, yeah.
I also really like this, Matt. I want to talk to you about this really quick. I don't understand why that gives her the right to muck up our lungs with her cigarette smoke, Linny said. The vertical line was returning between her brows. Rick smiled. Oh, Shuri, this after all the bars this is not there, she said, the vertical line deepening. And I thought, Rick, you may be French, but you have a lot to learn about this particular American woman. So the reason I pulled this out, Matt, is I think with so much of the relationship that Edgar has with these women in his life that are not Elizabeth or Ilse, we have to look in the periphery. We have to look in moments like this because Edgar never talks about them very much. But like, here's a moment where we kind of see the type of person that Linny is, and a little Pamish, maybe
Yeah.
she's much similar to her mother than Ilse is, and maybe that's part of the reason why Edgar and her don't get along as well.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, like we were saying earlier, if Ilsa just loves him and is sort of an easygoing person. I think we've seen that Ilse is a very easygoing person.
Yeah.
Lenny is not an easygoing person.
No, she's difficult.
Lenny,
Yeah. Yeah.
difficult child. Difficult child is just less appealing, right?
Hmm.
It's just true.
Harder to love. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So Edgar takes Elizabeth around looking at the pictures. She's touched and moved, quoting poetry to him. She quotes this poem, in fact, Matt. Speak, memory, that I may not forget the taste of roses, nor the sound of ashes in the wind, that I may once more taste the green cup of the sea. So this is by a French poet named Dalbim. I can't speak French at all. Dalbim Nadir, which is a fun word there, Nadir,
yeah,
because we're about to hit Edgar's Nadir for sure, or
uh-huh,
perhaps we were already in it.
yeah,
I kind of love this poem though, Matt, because I really want to dissect this with you first. The other thing that Elizabeth tells Edgar is that art is memory. She tells Edgar, and his art has brought her back to this time, and he has captured the essence of Duma in this, especially with the roses that grow on shells painting. So Matt, art is memory. Let's talk about this poem a little bit.
yeah. Isn't it interesting? Because I've heard many definitions for what art is in my life.
Hmm.
I've never heard art as memory.
But it's kind of true, right?
Yeah.
Like how often on this show do we talk about this moment in our life that this book made us think about, or re-experience, or just channel? Like that happens all the time for us, because
Yeah.
that happens all the time for everyone.
Well, if art doesn't resonate with something in you, then it's hard. Therefore, almost by definition, it's not doing anything for you.
Hmm.
And for it to resonate with something, kind of requires that there be a memory or an experience, which
Yeah.
is another word for memory, really,
Yeah.
that it's touching. It's it's like memories are the keys on the piano that art is playing, or something.
Hmm.
Um,
But
I don't know. Go ahead. Yeah.
well, this poem is so evocative to me, Matt, because listen to like that I might not forget the taste of roses, nor the sound of ashes in the wind, that may once more taste the green cup of the sea. These are not the senses normally attributed to those things, right?
Yeah.
Why would you want to remember the taste of roses? No, no, no. You want to remember the smell of roses, the sound of ashes on the wind. There's no sound there.
Yeah.
What sound do ashes on the wind make? Why would you want to taste? It's not the taste of the ocean is not the thing you remember of the ocean. But I think what we're doing here, and I think why King is channeling this poem in particular, because he's talking about memory's power to attach sensation to things and events that we wouldn't normally have, and therefore art's power to do this, right? Like art just doesn't reflect your memory of the smell of the roses, but it gives them deeper substance, greater substance, the taste of the roses, the sound of ash on the wind. Like these are things that only through the power of memory, aka the power of art, can a person fully truly experience. I think
Yeah.
that's so cool.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. It's funny. It's really hard to, um, like all good poetry, very difficult to articulate what it's making you think, but it
Hmm.
does push a lot of buttons. The taste of roses, like you say, it's like you've never tasted roses. Or I've certainly never tasted roses, but somehow I can imagine what a rose must taste like.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I don't know that I ever heard the sound of ashes on the wind, but I somehow imagine that I could guess what that sounds like, and my mind almost involuntarily conjures up that sound. The
yeah. But
green cup of go ahead.
like
Yeah.
the sound of ashes on the wind is just the sound of the wind. Like the ashes point of the wind, like that is something, when the wind is picking up ash, that's something you see generally,
Yeah.
not something you hear.
I agree. I think so I agree with everything you just said, but I think what I'm thinking about is that this poem is pointing us at two sensations that we've never actually felt. And then for me anyway, I kind of automatically generate like a impression of what that was probably like, which is derived. I mean, in the case of roses, it's derived from the smell of roses, and flowers that I've eaten as part of a garnish or whatever.
Mm-hmm,
And in
mm-hmm.
the case of ashes on the wind, I mean, like you're technically correct that would be silence, but my mind sort of just conjures up like skittering of sand in the wind, right? Which is again not going to sound like ashes, but it's kind of
Yeah,
close. It's funny. It's like I'm assembling a simulacrum of what the poem is talking about out of my own memories, which are not the actual things being referenced in the poem,
yeah,
but I'm using memory to paint this picture.
right. Yeah, because flowers do have a taste. The ash
Mhm,
on the wind does have a sound. The
mhm,
ocean does have a taste, right? But like,
mhm.
it's just those are not the sensations you would most commonly uh, attribute to them, and therefore the use of that makes it more evocative in a specific way, and I think is meant to channel the specific power of memory that it can give you these things. Like I love that idea that I've never tasted roses, but suddenly I feel like I can because of memory of what a rose is and what a rose smells like, and my memory of experience of roses. That's the power of memory.
Yeah,
Love it.
right. And I've seen the ocean in a lot of different moods, but I don't think I've ever really seen it green. But you have no
Mhm.
trouble thinking of the sea as green, right? So
Yeah, well,
it's yeah,
well, again, like taste the green cup of the sea. Like
yeah,
the idea that like the clarifying thing there is the sea is green, and I want to taste that. No, you want
yeah,
to see it. You want to see it.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I love this. I love this so much.
Me too.
The other thing I would just want to mention here is we haven't like talked about the roses thing with like roses grow on shells is a work of Edgar's that has been referenced many times here as being particularly potent and particularly powerful, and we haven't talked about that. Red roses have a very specific Dark Tower connotation here for us, and we're being shown like these roses. This picture has power, so I thought I'd at least mention that. Hey, is there any link to our tower that we can make here?
I mean, I think so. Actually, I will. I'll give you this one.
Okay.
Because I honestly thought about this a couple times while we were reading, and then I forgot each time until now you've brought it up. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think we don't really understand the magical nature of Edgar's paintings exactly, so we can't really say like where the force of this is coming from exactly. But
Mhm.
I think the idea of roses as a symbol for like redemption and um sort of the inherent goodness of the world is um relatively persistent across King's works, and I think that's kind of what is speaking to Elizabeth about the painting is she's specifically reacting to it. She's moved by the painting, or the I guess it's a drawing, not a painting, right? But she's moved by it because um, it makes her feel like she feels that way about Duma, like the idea of like the rose in Keystone Earth or the
Mhm.
roses around the Dark Tower are like these symbols of redemption and hope. Maybe is
Yeah.
too broad a word, but something like that. And that to her, I think, is what Duma is. So the idea of these roses being associated with Duma, I think, is resonating with her.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I like that. I think that is a completely valid link to make there, and I dig it for sure.
Now we're just missing an unfound door. Got a
We
key,
do.
got a Duma key, we got a rose. We just need an unfound door.
It's such a stupid joke. I love it. Matt, also of note is Elizabeth's statement here that she knew an artist would come to Duma Key eventually, but she is so happy that it was someone who, quote, could produce works of such power and sweetness. So, with this, Matt, I once again ask the question, where does Edgar's talent come from? Does it come from within him, or does it come from Duma Key? What do you think?
Well, I think we talked about this a little bit last time. I think ultimately my answer is that I really like the idea that it comes from within him, but I feel like the book is strongly suggesting that it comes from the key. I mean, we just have to look at the fact that he didn't really create anything until he came to the key. And then also he tells us that his art career is over,
Mm-hmm.
meaning, he's going to leave the key and then he's not going to do any more art. Could very well be that it's much like Elizabeth. He sort of chose to be done doing art because it was too dangerous. But I feel like the book wants us to strongly consider the possibility that the key is just making him magically good at art.
Yeah, that's interesting. I kind of this sentence, and the reason I brought this up is because to me this tells the opposite of that. To me, the idea was that Elizabeth knew someone was going to come, that Perse, whatever, was going to draw someone here eventually that could do art and could make this art in this quest to wake up or whatever. But she's thrilled that it was someone that, quote, could produce works of such power and sweetness. This idea that like it could have been anyone, but isn't it great that the person that was drawn here can do these things? To me, kind of indicates that some of this, at least, maybe even most of it, is coming from within him. And yeah, I agree with you that Duma is amplifying, is taking him from, oh, that was pretty good, to holy shit, the show is a sell. But I think the talent, the core of this is Edgar in my mind.
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, so another thought that crosses my mind is like, Edgar before the accident and Edgar after the accident might be sort of two different people when it comes to the question of artistic talent. Like he doodled for his whole life, and maybe people thought his doodles were okay. Like apparently he drew these children's books for his daughter, and they were impressive, right? There was some degree of impressive, but not like, oh my god, holy shit, impressive. But then only after he got his head injury and went to Duma Key, of course, these things are confounded, did he really start creating these amazing things. And like the idea of somebody getting a head injury and beginning to produce interesting and different art is not unheard of.
Sure.
I can think of at least one example of a guy who, I forget if he had a stroke or if he hit his head, one of those two, and he started making these incredible like geometric images, and just sort of like savantism after a head injury is not completely unheard of. So I think that's in play. Like it was the injury that actually made him special, not the island per se.
Yeah. I think what I'm doing here is I really want it to be coming from him.
Yeah.
And I like that better. And so I'm desperately searching for every instance of
Sure.
evidence that could point to that. And to me, when I read this, I was like, oh, this kind of settles it in my mind that she is saying Edgar is unique in some kind of way. That it could have been anyone, it could have been any artist, but look, it's this artist who's able to do these things that are great.
I like that a lot. And I mean, honestly, the biggest thing that sticks in my craw when it comes to just accepting, the magic comes from Duma Key, is I'm like, well, what does that mean though? Like, I don't think Stephen King in this, heartfelt and nuanced story about the nature of artistic talent is really trying to say like, yeah, and then sometimes there's places that just make you better at art. It's like, I don't even know what that would mean metaphorically. I don't even like, clearly he doesn't see talent that way, or art. So that's, I don't know. I'm still on the fence, I guess. I like what you're saying here, though.
Great. Well, I mean, we'll see. That is, by the way, like one of the struggles of this book, and I don't mean that in like this book isn't excellent. I think this book is wonderful, and I've loved talking about it. But like, I feel like every week it's been like, oh, here's another fun example of what we think King is doing with the exploration of art and creativity. What does it mean? And then we always have to go, we'll see. I mean, I think one of the inherent flaws of what we do here is that like we there are many beats throughout a story that are reinforcing what the central conceit of the story is, but we cannot fully talk about that central conceit of the story until we've gotten to the conceit, which is typically at the end of the story.
Yeah.
So we just have to, like, I think it's important to draw these things out and be like, hey, look, this is doing this. And I think it makes that payoff land for us so much better when we're like, oh, we had 3 hours of conversation about this one particular thing, and then we got to see how that paid off in the end. But right now it's just like, yeah, interesting. We'll have to wait and see what this book says about the nature of creation and how the antagonist versus the protagonist relate to that central theme.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Just ping off that for 1 second. Like the fact that we know so little about the antagonist really makes it
Mm.
extra hard to
Mhm.
figure out some of these questions.
Definitely, definitely. And that is a choice, considering how
Yeah.
much we know about what else is going to happen. To the we talked about mystery being an important aspect of Gothic literature, like the mystery of the story of this place, and King is fully committed to that. In that, we've got 2 more episodes covering this book after this one, and we still have no idea who this person is. Which I think by this time in it, like we had gotten a full a full
Yeah.
like, hi, I'm Pennywise, and this
Right.
is my story.
Yeah. This is the
Moment.
inner
Yeah,
life of Pennywise the Clown. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
All right, so Edgar tours Elizabeth around, and everything seems to be going great. As we said, she's so appreciative and touched by his painting until Elizabeth sees girl and ship 1 through 8, and then here's when it flips. Matt, Elizabeth is horrified by the paintings, by the little girl she recognizes from here in them. We learn that the girl in Girl in Ship 4 is Elizabeth's sister. And the trinkets littering the top of the ship are things from her past, and as we said, things from Edgar's past. And she points out something that no one had seen in the wake of the ship in painting number 8. There are faces of the dead in the wake of that ship, and the only people that seem to notice that are him and Illy, which I think is important, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's so interesting that Elizabeth has this incredible artistic talent that she's the only one that can notice these faces that are clearly there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's incredible. Yeah, this is a
Or,
great moment.
she just tuned in on a wavelength that no one else is, but that Edgar is, which again I think perhaps reinforces why there is such a deep connection between those two specifically.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. It is so. I was thinking sort of along the same lines that like Edgar's not being very analytical regarding his own art. I was like, I really wish that Elizabeth had been like, okay, so like if you start to paint an evil ship, it's because of a monster. It's because of a demonic psychic vampire on the island that feeds on daughters in exchange for artistic power boosts. Okay, just so you know. And I get, that she's been mentally deteriorating throughout the book, so I
Yeah,
don't feel an urge to be too hard on her. And it's also unclear what she knows and what she doesn't know, right? Because this all happened to her when she was a little girl.
yeah,
So my frustration, I think, is more just like not like, oh, the book is wrong, but like, oh, I
yeah.
really wish that things weren't going to go horribly.
Yeah, I mean, to defend her a little bit, I think it is a bit of, yes, her mental deterioration. I think it's also a bit of her trying very, very hard to not remember, right? Like
Mhm.
I guess the idea, if art is memory, then Elizabeth has chosen to forget by choosing to stop drawing, right? She
Yeah,
has abandoned her art and stopped doing it for whatever reason, and so she's choosing to forget. She's choosing to look past, and even as stuff starts happening, like it is only in her non-lucid moments where she kind of reaches out to Edgar, right? She doesn't. It's always seems like when she's the least lucid is when she's saying like cryptic statements about the table being cracked and her being awake and all these things, because it's like the truth wants to escape, and it can only do so when the guards of her consciousness are down.
yeah, that's true. You're 100% right.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I agree with you. It's like, come on, just tell me what's going on here. And like she tries to, right? Like I love the one of the first things she said to him is like, "There's a red picnic basket in the attic. Get it,
Uh,
go get it." And he just never does it. And he's like, "Sorry, my bad. I got caught up in my paintings." And the dying Elizabeth's like, what are you gonna do?"
yeah, no, I mean that's totally fair. That like maybe I forgot about that honestly until you pointed out, and it's like, yeah, she kind of tried. She kind of did
Mhm.
her best, actually.
Yeah, and again, we've seen moments of her being um led to believe she's been possessed in times as well, right? So, how much of this is Percy's influence on her?
Right.
Um, because the one time she decides to tell her stuff is the time that Percy just says, "Fuck you, you're dead." Right.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, how much was she even able to? I don't know.
Yeah. Good point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but as we talked about, Elizabeth is taken into the back, tries to warn Edgar he needs to get the red picnic basket up, um, and because she's awake. But before she can say more, she begins seizing, and Edgar basically does exactly what we said there, where he's immediately like, "This is Percy." Does the audiobook say Perse or Percy?
It's just
Like,
Percy. Yeah. Just
okay,
Percy, like
yeah,
which is not how it's spelled, but that's how the
yeah,
audiobook
yeah.
does it. Yeah.
So yeah, Edgar is basically like, Percy did this. She was trying to warn me or tell me about something, and Percy stopped her. And I think, like, again, when King wants you to just take stuff for fact, like, he makes it clear. And I think that's just what we're supposed to take away from this is like, yep, that's what happened.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah. I think that sounds about right.
So Elizabeth is taken to the hospital, and Edgar stays at the show till it's over, then getting a ride to the hospital from Mary Eyre. Mary tells him that she's going to praise his show in her review, and also hands him a manila envelope, which we'll see is an article about Elizabeth Eastlake, child prodigy who could draw as early as 2 years old. And Matt, as the parent of a 2-year-old right this very minute, I can confirm that if my son started drawing full-ass pictures right now, I would praise him as a savant, because he's really good at like scribbling, and he can I also sometimes like trace something in his scribbles, but that's about it. That's about it.
Yeah, having had 3 2-year-olds, that's that sounds about right to me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Elizabeth dies in the hospital, Matt, but is able to give Edgar a few final messages before she goes. We get 3 of them. The table is leaking. You will want to, but you mustn't, and drown her back to sleep. What are your thoughts here?
Well, so my just like wild asshole guess is that they're gonna have to find her doll and put her dolly underwater somehow, and the dolly is not gonna like it. It's I'm kind of going partly based on this ritual she has where she makes Wireman put the doll in the pond, or pretend
Yeah.
to put the doll in the pond, actually.
Yeah, maybe he should have been really doing that, right?
Maybe he should have been really doing that. Yeah, that's possibly right. I mean, like I got the feeling that mattered. That was
Yeah.
either her reenacting something that mattered, or like perhaps literally was important at the time.
Yeah, I mean, the book has like strongly hinted towards the fact that this China doll that her father finds in his salvage is connected to this in some way,
Yeah.
is important, and it is kind of the personification of Percy. Perhaps we don't know.
The you will want to but you mustn't is very interesting, because it's like it hints at some choice that Edgar will have to make.
Yeah.
Where he will really want to do the one thing, but that will be the bad thing, the worst thing that he shouldn't do, and it'll be very tempting. And so she's, I guess, preparing him for that, and we'll just have to see what that's going to be.
Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
So Wireman and Edgar look through the article about Elizabeth's skill as an artist and ask a lot of good questions, Matt. Why did she stop drawing? And why did Wireman never start? If Percy drew him here in the same way she did Edgar, and in some ways Elizabeth, why no art to him? I don't know. What do you think? We don't really have any answers to these questions.
I don't know. I had a horrible thought the other day that maybe Wireman has his own dark purpose, that there's some horrible secret to Wireman that we don't know. And I mean, I say horrible because I really love Wireman. I want nothing for the best for Wireman. It would really kind of break my heart if there were like some horrible twist regarding Wireman. I think his friendship with Edgar is beautiful and great, but this is a Gothic tale, so like there's no way that Wireman has just like a totally uncomplicatedly happy ending. But what role does he serve? I don't know. I don't want to get too meta and bring in like Dark Tower stuff, but like everybody needs a quartet, right? You need to have your other people with other talents and other strengths to compensate for your weaknesses. Maybe he has strengths to compensate for Edgar's weaknesses, and so the White brought him here to fight the affront to God that is Percy.
I think you're right, but also, like, one thing that Elizabeth does in her moments of panic here is look at Wireman and be like, Percy drew him here just like she drew you. Wireman. And so it's like, okay, so Elizabeth is convinced that he's here because of Percy, that these damaged people are being drawn here for what reason? And yeah, what the hell is she doing with Wireman? We don't know. Or
Yeah.
or Elizabeth could be wrong there. Yeah, we I don't know.
It'd be interesting to consider that Wireman is an artist of some kind, just not an obvious kind that we would recognize as
Yeah,
being an artist.
that's interesting. Yeah. Okay. So Edgar heads home to the hotel in a stupor and finds a message from Pam waiting for him at the front desk. A message and a key. Matt, your unfound door is to Pam's bedroom.
Oh, fuck.
So Edgar goes up to Pam's room and gets support from his former wife, as he breaks down. I do love how this whole passage is written, though, Matt. Like, he's like walking to her, she's supporting him, he's talking about how strong she is both physically and mentally, and we have these italicized interstitials of things said by Elizabeth throughout the course of the book that are kind of invading his memory because he's just kind of consumed by his grief over her loss. It's really, really, really wonderful stuff. I love it so much.
Yeah, me too. It's great section there. I mean, it's interesting, even while we still don't really like Pam, I think that we're able to see some of the value of Pam here, and this is a good side of Pam, right? This is you begin to see, like, okay, she's not all bad.
Yeah, I mean, she's there to support him, and some grief sex is, it's good,
as you do.
Good. And I love how the words that end this chapter. For a little while, I forgot about Elizabeth and Wireman, picnic baskets, and Duma Key. For a little while, there was just she and I, like the old days, the 2 armed days. For a little while after that, I slept until the first light came creeping. The loss of memory isn't always the problem. Sometimes, maybe even often, it's the solution. And isn't that great? Because that's the thing that has been driving Edgar crazy throughout this book. The thing that reduces him to that red rage is when he can't remember something, when he can't recall something. It, as we talked about last week, as it represents a loss of control. And he allows himself in this moment to let go of that a little bit, to realize, to recognize sometimes we don't need to remember everything. Maybe forgetting is good sometimes.
Yeah, especially powerful statement in a story that begins by saying this is a story about memory, and then we just had art defined as memory, and then he's saying sometimes it's bad. You don't want it.
I mean, I can't help but think about Johnny Marinville and his photographic memory of bad shit that happened to him in desperation, and wonder if King wrote that in for that character because that's how he kind of experiences things, that he has this very specific recall of the beat to beat moments of all the worst parts in his life, and this idea that he has that because he's an artist, because he's a writer. And man, sometimes that is as much of a curse as it is a gift. And I think this reinforces that idea.
Yeah, it reminds me of Harry August from the First 15 Lives of Harry August, which is one of my favorite books that we've ever read for the book club, which was this very similar idea, which sort of managed to take that notion and amplify it into a fate worse than death is to have to remember everything. That's really interesting. It's really interesting.
All right, Matt, how to draw a picture 8. The first lines of this one say, "Be brave. Don't be afraid to draw the secret things. No one said art was always a zephyr. Sometimes it's a hurricane." What do you think of this opening advice here? Be brave.
Be brave. You got to write about what happens to the kids down in the sewer. You can't not.
Be brave. Write the kid orgy.
Don't be a coward. Don't chicken out and write the wuss version of the novel that is palatable. I'm not really joking, because I think you got to be willing to draw the secret things. You got to be willing to write the things that are super uncomfortable and are going to make people go what is wrong with him? But at the same time, secretly in their head go oh, you've experienced that too? I thought I was the only one, because that's sort of the only art worth creating in a way.
Yes, but look at this sentence later in this section.
Uh-huh.
The bravery is in the doing, not the showing. The truth can be hidden away again if it's too terrible for the world to look at. And it happens. I'm sure it happens all the time. I think every artist worth a damn has a red picnic basket. So yes, Matt, be brave. Give the truth, write the truth of the scene, even if that truth is uncomfortable, even if that truth is going to have Generation Z on Reddit call you a weirdo every 3 months. Write it, but maybe this is Stephen King reflecting on that philosophy a little bit here. Maybe sometimes we should put stuff in the picnic basket, in the trunk, right? Maybe some like I love this idea of he honestly reflecting on this idea that has been central and core to him for his entire career, that what I am writing is the truth. What I am writing is my truth, the character's truth, the story's truth. That is the most important thing. But maybe maybe sometimes the world doesn't need that truth.
Yeah.
Maybe sometimes it's too much.
Well, I like to believe that King has a red trunk full of unpublished novels that are just too much. They're just too much for us. And maybe someday we'll get to read those novels.
Maybe. I think in the worst possible outcome for Stephen King in his mind would probably be he passes away, his estate opens up his red picnic basket and publishes everything in there.
Yeah, probably. But, there's something to be said for not being around anymore.
So the story of this interlude, though, Matt, is young Libet, presumably after the death of her sisters, is desperate. She goes for help. She goes to Nan Melda. They stand in, and what we're told is the one safe place, which we don't know where is it safe and why is it safe there. And Elizabeth tells Nan the whole truth. And we're told that Nan basically believes her here because he's seen the big boy and because she's seen Charlie. We don't know who Charlie is.
No idea.
Yeah.
We barely know who the big boy is. In fact, am I mistaken, or is the big boy just the giant creepy frog creature?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. It's the creepy frog that drew the little sisters out into the water. Or chased, rather, out into the water. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Nan Melda, though, we see here, has an idea of what to do with the little China doll in the heart-shaped box. But of course, we don't get to see that yet, unfortunately. So that we're kind of seeing, it feels like we're getting to the end of the Elizabeth Eastlake story, right? As we're approaching the climax of the novel, it's like both stories are ending at the same time. Because presumably soon we're going to find out what she does, how she does it, and hopefully that will help Edgar figure out what the hell he's supposed to do.
Yeah, I mean, we know that he drew much of her story, so maybe he figures out what he's supposed to do by using his shining to draw the past, and
I mean, and that's essentially where we leave this week's reading, right? Like he's going to sit down and draw using her drawings in the red basket as his muse to hopefully unlock the secrets of her past. So speaking of which, let's move on to that chapter.
All right,
let's talk about chapter 14, the red basket. The next morning, Edgar is sitting outside the pool, pondering life, when Ilse comes and joins him. And Matt, I love this part, and I want to talk to you about this for a little bit. They talk a little bit, and he says he's doing okay. And it says, that left me free to move on to other matters. I didn't want to, but I was still her father, and she was in many ways still a child, which meant that no matter how badly I felt about Elizabeth Eastlake this morning, or how confused I might be about my own situation, I still had certain duties to fulfill. And I think, Matt, this is, in my estimation, one of the best distillations of what being a parent is like. This idea, and I know this feeling isn't like exclusive to parenting, like this feeling of responsibilities need to trump your personal issues and feelings. Like that's not exclusive to parenting, but man, this is accurate, right? It's like you're in a rough place, you're not doing well, but you have a job to do and you don't get to take breaks from this job, and so you have to do it. I love it, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's one of the parenting gives you a reservoir of strength that you otherwise don't find out about, because puts those demands on you. I love it.
All right, so Edgar broaches the subject of Ilsa's fiance, or rather former fiance, it seems. And once again, I think he nails this whole adult child thing here, Matt. Like, I can't imagine someone doing better than Edgar does here. He asks questions, he supports, he doesn't push, he doesn't nag, he offers advice, but he asks first if she wants advice, and then gives it. I feel like when my children turn into adults, I will be thinking about Edgar and Ilse Fremantle when engaging them in difficult conversations of their lives, right? Just like, this is like the template in my mind of how to handle this thing.
Yeah, I agree. I love their relationship. I'm glad nothing bad is going to happen to either of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's no, I agree. I mean, I to be honest though, like there's such this pall of dread hanging over all this stuff that I had a hard time. Not that I am blind to what you're talking about here, obviously, but it's becomes increasingly hard to even pay attention to like their interactions when you're like, oh my god, I'm so anxious. I almost feel like this must be different on a second read through, because then at least you know how things turn out for everyone involved. Even if
Mm-hmm.
it's horrible, you can just be like, that's fine, I know that now, I can just read the scene, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's very distracting for me, honestly.
No, that's
But
fair. That's fair.
the other thing I'll say is like, she tells him what happened with her fiance, and that doesn't really strike me as being quite what Edgar painted or drew with the colored pencils, actually.
Yeah,
With like the tennis balls in the surf, I believe, or the tennis balls on the beach, maybe.
it
Um,
was in the surf. Yeah,
in
yeah,
the surf, and there was heartbreak in Elsa's future, and it's like, ah, man, this doesn't really feel like heartbreak. This feels like a kind of mature. Um, this doesn't feel like heartbreak. Heartbreak is powerful. This is just like this guy screwed around and she's done with him,
yeah,
and also like I don't need there to be literal tennis balls. Maybe there will be literal, but like what does the tennis balls mean? What is that? Like that's just
yeah.
an element that's not in here. So I'm like, whatever that drawing was, I think that's still coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and don't forget, he drew who we know now as Percy.
Hmm, hmm.
Early on, when and I think he drew a woman in a red robe,
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
and we now know, based on his pictures, and then when he looks through Elizabeth's pictures, that that's just Percy, and
yeah, yeah.
he drew that in connection with Ilsa. And like, I think the assumption he made at the time was, oh, is this the woman that her boyfriend's gonna cheat on her with?
Right,
And that's why I'm drawing this scary red robed woman. But no, 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 no.
right.
So yeah, I think you're right to pick up on that. And interestingly enough, Edgar doesn't seem to have clocked that, or at least
No,
the past Edgar, not Edgar telling the story Edgar. Um,
yeah. I mean, past Edgar seems, I think, willfully obtuse about the idea that his daughter is in any danger. I think it's just
mhm.
because it's such a terrifying idea that
Yeah, yeah,
like he took the advice of like she should never come back to Duma Key pretty seriously. But beyond that, I mean, perhaps he just feels like, yep, I did it. I made sure she wasn't going to come back to Duma Key. Now we're done.
yeah. I mean, he thinks he's done that.
Yeah,
He's gotten all the paintings off Duma Key. He's gotten his children off Duma Key. In his mind, it's good. We're good. Everyone's safe.
right,
Now we don't know why they're not, but we do basically know that they're not. Like, that's what the text is implying. But yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
The next few pages are kind of a blur, Matt, and it's all the kind of the after show family activities that Edgar has to do, but isn't particularly interested in doing. Wireman calls to say that they found the red picnic basket, and also that something was left for Edgar at Big Pink, but not to go and investigate without the two of them. And it's kind of like the book, in my opinion, acknowledging that the plot is out there. Like, the plot of the book is out there in Big Pink, waiting for you, Edgar, waiting to be picked up again. But first, you have to do all this stuff. And what I love about this is, like, it's the book does not write this section as if Edgar is like anxious to go to Big Pink and pick up the plot again. It's written with heartbreak. It's written wistful. It's written with the knowledge that this is the last day Edgar is ever going to see his daughter, as it tells us. And so while Edgar of the past is kind of in this moment where he's like indifferent and cold, because he's going through grief and he's going through this process, and maybe he is actually anxious to get to Big Pink and figure out what the fuck's going on. So he's just kind of going through the motions. The Edgar from the present, the Edgar writing the story and thinking about 4 years ago, wants these moments to go on forever. And so it is written with this very kind of beautifully tragic, wistful um, uh, longing, I think is the
Yeah.
right word.
Well, and by saying that, you've reminded me once again, this is a book about memory, and this is him
Mm-hmm.
reliving this memory and trying to stay in this memory, right? Really clearly reveling in it. And
Yeah.
um, I think that's a thing I don't know that I miss entirely, but I'm sort of reappreciating the importance of the idea that this is a book about memory, and it is
Mm-hmm.
Edgar literally remembering and reliving these events.
Yeah. Yeah. So then he says goodbye to his family. They're all leaving early, Matt. They're heading back, and so is Ilse. And he says goodbye to them all. And we get this line: "She turned back once and waved to me. By then, little more than a girl shape behind the polarized glass. I wish with all my heart that I could have seen her better, because I never saw her again." But she's like fine though.
Yeah,
Because like he just means that he's in Mexico and he just hasn't seen her
yeah,
in 4 years.
yeah. She's maybe he gets people get really mad at him
Yeah,
because
yeah,
he paints something that they think is inappropriate,
yeah.
and they post on Reddit about it, and and then she's like, "Dad, I can't believe you did that. I'm never going to speak to you again." Um, and that's
Yeah,
what happens.
that's exactly what it is. Everyone's fine. Everyone is
Yeah.
fine.
Well,
That's the important thing.
Edgar's canceled, but everyone else is fine.
Well, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
That's where everyone who's canceled, they go to Mexico.
Exactly.
I mean, like we're being coy here, but like the book is strongly leading on Ilse is about to die, right?
Yeah.
And like I think it's interesting that King says that without saying it here, right? Like
Yeah.
it doesn't say because I never saw her again because she died on Tuesday.
Right.
And presumably we're still going to get there and get to the description, but he is being just a little coy, but not completely coy.
I mean,
With
it's
this.
entirely it is possible that she's not going to die. It's
Yeah.
possible. But I would be very confused if we did all of this and then she just decided to take a job in Australia.
I don't think that's like the language of
Yeah.
oh, she's just been really far away and I just haven't gotten a chance to see her in a while is not I never saw her again. It's like I haven't seen her since. And you definitely say like
Yeah.
you definitely don't say like I wish I could have seen her better in that polarized glass. If she's just in Australia.
Yeah, she's yeah. I talk to her on the phone every week, but it's not the same.
But I don't get to see her.
Yeah.
We don't do it's only 2008. We're video call really not working out for us yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember at exactly what point I realized that Elsa was going to die, but it was actually prior to this moment. I think it was because he was spending, paragraphs just gushing over how wonderful she is and how he loves her more than everyone else. And I was like, I can be kind of dense when it comes to what are known as death flags. But this is heavy death flags,
Yeah, this is like a death flag that's like those big flags that car dealerships put up that are like the biggest flag you've ever seen. Yeah. No, and yeah, as a person who's going back and reading this again, like it's just you're absolutely right that the tone around Ilse from the very beginning of the book has been this longing, wistful, like she's not around anymore type thing.
Right. Yeah.
You don't necessarily see it at the time, but yeah, it's there.
Yep.
So Edgar heads back to the plot now, meeting Jack and Wireman at his place. We've learned that Wireman has filled Jack in on everything. And while he thinks this all is a bit nuts, he actually just believes it, Matt. There is always something he was unable to pin down about how Edgar and Duma just seemed made for each other in a way that almost felt supernatural. And so he's just like, yeah, okay, I'm for this. Interestingly enough, though, Matt, he says this is I would have thought it sounded like something out of an M. Night Shyamalan movie is what he says. which means the only logical explanation here is that Stephen King is a big Night fan, which I thoroughly support.
I agree. Also, kind of weird that it wasn't like, this is something out of a Stephen King novel, which is something he would totally do in his Dark Tower books.
Sure. Yeah.
But no, I mean, M. Night Shyamalan is Doof favorite, right? So
yeah. And I just want to point out, in 2008, The Happening came out, and 2006 was Lady in the Water. So to make this reference in 2006, 2007, when he was writing the novel, like, we're already on the Shyamalan downward slide. So
yeah. According to others,
yes, we are. We've talked about this extensively, that there was no slide. We don't talk about the Avatar movie though.
No.
But my point with that is, it just seems like it, like, to summon Shyamalan in this moment, like, just I think he digs him. I think King digs Night is my theory here.
Yeah. It's also kind of interesting you bring up Lady in the Water. I mean, that's a movie about a creature that lives in the water.
A lady,
not a red robe lady, but a lady.
Can't believe Stephen King plagiarized M. Night Shyamalan.
Wow, I can't believe we never noticed the connection before.
Did you hear the story about how there was a guy accusing the holdovers of plagiarizing his script?
No, I did not.
Yeah, his script is about a doctor who got saddled with a kid over the holidays. And he's saying the holdover stole from his script. And when you, like, look into the details of it, it's fucking nonsense, man. It's just total nonsense. It's like, yeah, but I was just thinking about that a lot, because Variety decided to run that story the day before the Oscars instead of, like, during. They apparently had it for a while, but they ran it, like, the night before the Oscars instead of while voting is going on, which is, like, the signal of, like, we don't really think there's anything here, but we don't want to be accused of not saying it, so we're just going to run this at a time when no one cares anymore. It's just weird.
That's
journalism yeah. All right, sorry, that was a tangent. Sorry. I do not think the holdovers was plagiarized. I do not think so. Okay, so they go into Big Pink and find footsteps, Matt. One adult, 2 children have been in the house. The adult stayed downstairs, but the 2 kids went up. And Matt, here's a valid question that's asked at this moment. If the 2 children are Elizabeth's dead sisters, which we can assume that they are, who is the adult? Who is this? Is it a ghost? Is it not? Are any of these people ghosts? If so, who is the adult ghost? Matt, what's going on here?
I mean, I figured they're just, like, undead, not ghosts. And
whatever.
I mean, the adult, I really only have 1.5 guesses. I mean, it's possible that it's just Perse, and Perse has a physical body. A thought that couldn't get out of my head was, like, well, it could be, like, one of the other Eastlake sisters, because I think I just got confused about this at some point, because I think ultimately all the other sisters were accounted for, but for a long time I had this theory that I don't think I ever mentioned, that was like, one of her sisters just eloped and ran away, and I was like, I don't think she eloped. I think she also drowned, and they just assumed that she eloped because she disappeared. But then I believe that it's, like, later the book was like, no, she totally just eloped. It's fine.
Yeah, she died, I think, much later. Well, actually, I don't know if I think they lost track of her. So you might be onto something there.
Yeah, that was my 0.5. Yeah. But yeah, I don't, beyond that, I don't really know.
Yeah. Well, the footsteps did a thing, Matt, because what they did was they lifted a canvas up onto the easel, and then they painted a picture for Edgar. It's just some words in finger paints. Where our sister, in red. They try to reason what this could possibly mean. It's not Elizabeth, right? Like, Elizabeth, where is she? You've known the whole time.
Yeah.
And all the other Eastlake women are gone now too. They moved off the key and they died somewhere else. So who are they talking about? Who is the sister here, Matt?
I mean, my number one guess is that they're talking about Ilse, because they don't need it to be their sister. They need a sister that they are possessive of. Therefore, it is our sister. See how that works. I don't have any better idea though. Like they did.
Sure.
I mean, what else would it even be?
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
You're not supposed to know is the answer.
Okay,
Like,
cool.
it's fun asking you. I feel like I have to do it, but I don't expect you to come up with the correct answer to any of these things. Yeah.
I enjoy these little puzzles you give me.
It's not me, it's the book.
Yes.
So they finally get to the picnic basket, which we will learn was the storage place for all Elizabeth's drawings. The drawings are in here in chronological order, Matt. As they flip through them, they basically see the story of Elizabeth's childhood from simple beginnings to the first time she draws the ship, which, Matt, it turns out is absolutely identical to the first thing Edgar drew on the key. It just looks just exactly like Hello, the first sketch he made. They're really, the text is really specific about this, Matt. It's not that it looks similar. It's not that, oh, this reminds me of the first drawing I did. It's the same drawing. The drawing he drew first is this drawing exactly.
And
Scary.
I like that it's hello, because it's almost like it's Perse saying hello.
Saying hi. Yeah. Hi. Hello. Yeah. So as the drawings continue, they get worse and worse and worse until the final one. And this is a little bit long, but I'm going to read this because I really, really like it. Beneath the screaming father was the ship again. Only this time it really was my ship, my Perse. Elizabeth had painted it at night, and not with a brush. I could see the ancient dried prints of her child's fingers in the swirls of gray and black. This time as it was if she had finally seen through the Perse's disguise. The boards were splintered, the sails drooping and full of holes. Around her, blue in the light of the moon that did not smile or send out happy rays, hundreds of skeleton arms arose from the water in a dripping salute. And standing on the foredeck was a baggy, pallid thing, vaguely female, wearing a decayed something that might have been a cloak, a winding shroud, or a robe. It was the red robe, my red robe, only seen from the front. 3 empty sockets peered from its head, and its grin outran the sides of its face in a crazy jumble of lips and teeth. It was far more horrible than my girl in ship paintings, because it went straight to the heart of the matter without any pause for the mind to catch up. This is everything awful, it said. This is everything you ever feared to find in the waiting dark. See how its grin races off its face into the moonlight. See how the drowned salute it. Holy shit! This dude can write. This Stephen King, he's a writer.
Yeah, he is. I'm fond of him.
I loved every bit of that. That's so good.
Me too. I mean, we've been building up, I think, to this idea, because you're right that the red robed figure was introduced quite early, and we've always wondered, is it a woman? It's probably a woman. It's hard to tell, and then this is sort of a pivotal unmasking moment late in the story.
With its 3 eyes.
3 eyes. Yeah, I love that. And just like, grotesquely misshapen. I mean, it's referred to as female, but I'm leaning toward like, this is not a human. This is a being. This is a demon. This is a creature.
I love the description of a smile that outran the sides of its face, a grin that outran the sides of its face in a crazy jumble of lips and teeth. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I love it.
Ugh, so terrifying. And like a 4-year-old drew this, with their fingers.
Right. I for some reason, part of the image that gets to me is the screaming father. There's like a screaming father in the picture, right?
It's the photo before.
Oh,
so
there's the
final 2 pictures are her father screaming, and it's like one of the most horrifying, awful photos like that he's ever seen drawn. That's just like this horrifying picture of him screaming in grief and rage and anger. And then after that picture is this one.
Right. Yeah, that disturbed me too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's all incredibly described though. Incredibly described disturbing stuff. Like he just really flips the switch and turns this shit on, and I love it.
Me too.
One thing I did want to point out here, Matt, that I think is worth talking about is Wireman has kind of assumed the role of the doubter at this point of the story. Like he was willing to ride with Edgar with his magic paintings that kill people and cure blindness. But the idea that the ship that both he and Elizabeth were painting is a real ship, that these are real people, real ghosts, real zombies, whatever you want to call them. This almost seems like a bridge too far from him. And he's pushing back against Edgar. Like, not like entirely. Like he's not saying, Edgar, you're ridiculous, I don't buy into any of this, but he is pushing back against him harder than he's ever done. It's just enough that I noticed the change.
Yeah.
I think, and I think the text kind of makes this clear in that, like, I think he does believe all this is happening. He's just really not sure if he wants to, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all well and good to admit that psychic shit is happening when the stakes are low and there's no nightmare beings from Toadash trying to eat your soul. But when that stops being true, then you start kind of trying to back out. And, it's not that he's a coward, but it's like understandable that you would be like, I really don't want that to be true. I want to find some other, I mean, fundamentally, just I want to find some other explanation for this.
Yeah.
Because, Edgar isn't necessarily right about everything he's saying either. Like,
no, yeah, that's true.
So Wireman may have a point.
Mm-hmm. So under the pictures, they find one more thing: the spear pistol with some unusual silver pronged spear tips to kill werewolves or vampires or art ghosts.
Yeah, the legend of the art ghost.
Edgar decides that in order to get the entire story, he needs to draw, he needs to paint, and he's going to use Elizabeth's drawing as inspiration. But he has to do it alone, Matt. He says, think of me as a gunslinger of the art world. I paint alone, partner. What do you think of that?
I think there might be something to that.
Can we just stop for a second and say something that we perhaps should have said 4 years ago?
Yeah.
That the idea that Stephen King took the idea of a gunslinger, which, as Edgar is saying right here, is a loner. I keep wanting to say the lone gunman, but no, that's a
different thing.
That's a different thing. We're not on that book yet. The loner, the isolated, that character, that archetype, he takes that concept and then he's immediately like, no. The whole thing has to be, you can't be that. You can't be a lone gunslinger. And like he turns that into an organization of gunslingers and makes the idea of the quartet the most important thing to the gunslinger. That's great. And I don't think we've ever like said that outright in the hundreds and hundreds of hours we've talked about all these stories.
Yeah, the idea that he uses gunslinger as a title instead of a way to refer to yeah, that's funny. You're right. It is and he thinks through all the implications of it too, is the fun part.
Yeah. So Wireman is still uncertain, to not wanting to believe there's a power or force in this world that's powerful enough to make all these things happen, which of course is terrifying that exists. But they can't help but to believe it. So our chapter ends with Edgar ready to solve the mystery of Elizabeth Eastlake, and then possibly taking a trip to the south of the island and whatever awaits him there. But we won't know what that is, Matt, because that's the end of this week's reading. We move on to the penultimate episode next week, actually.
All right. I'm getting so excited. We're moving into some climactic action, I assume. Stuff's going to happen. Mysteries are going to be revealed. We're at the part of the Gothic tale when like the blood starts coming out of the walls and shit like that. So I'm down.
Okay, I just want to remind you that Crimson Peak is not the only Gothic story ever made.
Yes, it is.
All right, yeah. So next week we will be reading chapters 15 through 17. I honestly can't remember, Matt, with how these chapters break up. If this is like the climax is going to happen next week, and then the week after will just be all denouement for an entire episode. I hope not, but I don't fully remember. So we'll see.
Yep, we'll see.
All right, before we go, we got a couple discussion questions to do. First is last week's question. We got some answers to this. Matt, what was the question we asked last week?
So we said Edgar absolutely kills it at the lecture this week. This week referring to last week, of course. What are some of your favorite moments of a character absolutely killing it at some sort of live presentation or performance? Maybe Can You Dig Your Sam says, setting aside Kevin Bacon's speech in Footloose, quoting biblical verses to support why teens should be able to dance, the obvious choice is President Whitmore's impassioned speech to the world in Independence Day. Cheesy as hell, and I love every moment of it. It literally made me cry in the movie theater. To give Matt an option to talk about Lord of the Rings, I also loved Aragorn's speech at the gates of Mordor. A day may come when the courage of men fails, but that is not this day. Viggo Mortensen is the definitive Aragorn. This is a hill I will die on. Sam goes on to say, I have to add the audition at the end of Flashdance. She starts, messes up, asks to restart, and then performs to perfection, even making the stodgy judges smile and shimmy their shoulders.
I love this, Sam, because you've got some quintessential 80s movies, some quintessential 90s movies, and some quintessential 2000s movies all in this answer. This is great. This is perfect.
I agree. I also love Theoden's speech in Lord of the Rings.
All the speeches in Lord of the Rings are so
That's
good.
true. That's true.
My favorite part about the Aragorn moment at the end of Lord of the Rings is when he like stares at the eye and then turns back and just says, "For Frodo."
Yeah.
And then they all charge, but you know who charges first is Aragorn. But you know who charges second out of everyone?
I do.
Merry
know,
and Pippin. Merry and Pippin.
That's right.
It's so great. And that, of course, everyone passes them because they're hobbits, but they're hobbits. The second ones to charge. It's so cool. God, I love Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I love it too. I like Theoden's speech because it's extremely metal.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I really like the President Whitmore speech from Independence Day. That's like, Independence Day is this, like, it shouldn't work in a lot of ways. It is so cheesy and so ridiculous. Like, that's a ridiculous speech. But part of it's Bill Pullman just nailing the lines, and part of it's just like we've just been inundated with this world for the last hour and a half, and we're just ready for all of it at this point. Like the climax of Independence Day is hello boys, I'm back. Like, how does that work? But it does.
Yeah, that's such a strange movie. It really is. I can't ever watch it objectively, right? Because we grew up with it. It's such a formative. It was the time when all that shit was just the coolest thing ever, because we were like exactly the age that was the target.
Yeah.
What a strange movie, though.
What a movie. All right, next we have Toscat, who says, for me, it's a description of the play in 11/22/63. I won't spoil anything specific, as this is the next book for Kingslingers, but the way it's depicted with the characters involved moved me in a way that the actual book the play is based on doesn't. Almost brought a tear to my eye. Well, Matt, I guess you'll have to wait a few more months to find out what's that. But now the book's ruined for you because you know there's a play.
Oh, there's a play.
Yeah.
What the hell are you talking about, Cat Toscat? I'm so curious. Outrageous Effort 17 says, nothing else for me beats that moment when Bill S. Preston Esquire and Ted Theodore Logan hit the stage at Wild Stallions at San Dimas High School after their most excellent adventure to pass their final exam. Man, now I got to go watch that. Yes.
I think it's perfect that Otherworlds 1999 also says, my answer came to me immediately for this one. For me, it will always be the kick-ass final project from Bill and Ted's excellent adventure. I claim all of my classical music knowledge from Looney Tunes, but all of my history knowledge from Bill and Ted. In their last-ditch effort to pass history, these two bumbling yet adorable friends managed to put together a well-thought-out presentation with rock music, fancy lighting, and pudding cups. They even managed to pronounce Beethoven and Socrates correctly. I wonder how many trips back in time it took to get it right.
Man, I want to rewatch those. I remember watching them as a kid and just not getting it, and then I watched them later as an adult and realized that they're genius, truly genius. And I kind of want to show them to my kids, but then at the same time, I'm like, they're not going to appreciate the layers. We'll see. I'll try. I'll shout it to him.
Yeah. I think I need to rewatch. They made like a new one that came out, I think, during the pandemic 4 years ago, and I feel like I don't know if I ever watched it.
I don't think I did.
I need to
put that on the list too. All right.
Yeah.
Jerk Stabworthy says, several come to mind, but there's only one that makes me weep every time. Season 13, episode 10 of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Mac comes out as gay to his dad with a beautiful interpretive dance routine by Varu, to Varu by Sigur Rós. It's brutal. The video is linked below. Warning, only watch if you're free to ugly cry. So I haven't really watched this show, and I really honestly can't tell if Jerk Stabworthy is being sarcastic, because I thought this show was like nihilistic, crude humor. Am I thinking of the wrong thing?
No, it It is. That doesn't mean it can't have beautiful moments of. I think they're being a little sarcastic, but
Okay.
no. I mean, the show has it's a wonderful show that has hilarious parts, and I don't want to call it heartfelt because it's sunny, which is kind of ridiculous. But no, I mean, I think it's a very funny scene, Matt. It's a very funny scene.
There's heart nestled within the irony, perhaps.
It's hilarious. You just like they linked it. Just go watch it.
Yeah, I'll watch it.
Mogi24 says, "Come on, people! The only performance that truly matters is Napoleon Dynamite dancing to Jamiroquai's Canned Heat." Were you a Napoleon Dynamite person? I feel like that one passed me by. I never got into it. I've seen it since, but I was never like obsessed with it. Like I felt like everyone was obsessed with it for a summer.
Yeah, I mean, I think I watched it when it came out, and I did not have the obsession reaction, and neither did I have the like, oh, this is overrated reaction. I think I had the correct reaction of just being like, yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
I know. I like this scene though. Yes, of course. Kasha Ku says, Birdman, Regan Thompson definitely stuck the landing. In fact, he stuck both landings. Yes, it's great.
Do you think that after making Birdman, our esteemed Birdman makes another Batman movie? Has that hurt the message of Birdman at all? That Michael Keaton appeared as Batman in the terrible Flash movie that came out last year.
Made a giant check and happily rode his bat plane into the moon set.
But Birdman is about a man who became just a comic book character actor and then wanted to be a serious actor and tried really hard and couldn't escape it.
Yeah.
And then
it's just a true story.
He's fucking Batman again.
Yeah. That's how it goes. That's how it goes. We can never escape. You know, if you get to be Batman, quit complaining. Just be Batman, you know?
One of my favorite moments from the Oscars was when Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger came on stage to present an award together. Of course, they're in the movie Twins together, right? But that's not what they talked about. They talked about how they were both Batman villains and how they both were defeated by Batman. And then Danny DeVito goes, and he's right there. And he pointed at his Michael Keaton, just glaring at him the entire time. It was a good bit. It was a really good bit.
That's awesome. That makes me so happy I didn't watch that.
How did you feel about Birdman? I can't remember. I have very complicated feelings about Alejandro Inarritu. I don't usually like his movies.
Yeah, I think it was boring and I didn't hate it. I think I was just like, I thought it was more stylistic than it needed to be. I don't have a problem with style. Like I love stylistic movies. I love Wes Anderson, but it's like I don't know that the substance is supporting this amount of style. This is a lot of style for some relatively thin gruel under the surface. Again, not awful. Not an awful movie. Didn't hate it.
I liked it a lot more than I liked The Revenant, which I did not like at all.
Yeah. You have famously strong opinions about The Revenant. Remember that
stupid movie. Leo wins his Oscar for eating raw meat.
Yeah, it's what you got to do. You got to be willing to eat the raw meat.
Red Sox homeboy says, my personal favorite live performance is Dream and Lucifer's very literal war of words in hell in the Sandman. With all of hell watching, Dream beats Lucifer at their own game, managing to keep calm while facing the possibility of eternal slavery. Inversely, the worst live performance is Walter White telling a bunch of high school kids how two planes colliding isn't actually all that bad.
Yeah, it's just 80 people in the grand scheme of things. 80 people die every day of
I think it's cool how often Sandman is answered as a response to these questions. I'm gonna read that.
Yeah, one of these days somebody invents a way of making comic books into audiobooks. You're right on that.
How do they I thought there's like I'm like 90% sure there's an audio play version, so you don't even have that excuse.
You're right. You're right. I'll have to come up with some other excuse later. Don't worry. Pear Jane says, for me, there's only one answer to this. Leslie Knope pitches the Harvest Festival to Pawnee's business folks while suffering from a terrible flu. Leslie Knope is one of my personal idols in many ways, but this scene typifies the things I love most about her. She has 103-degree fever, and she's literally hallucinating, but once she gets in front of the podium, she delivers a perfect pitch that rakes in sponsors for her big event. A bonus is Ben Wyatt's admiration for her, which is palpable. He lists all the injured/sick sports heroes who have succeeded and ends with, that was Leslie Knope. In the pantheon of great fictional relationships, theirs is second only to David and Patrick's from Schitt's Creek.
Have you ever watched Parks and Rec?
A couple episodes here and there, but not really seriously.
We rewatched / I think for my wife watched all of it. It was our new baby show.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of sitting around not being able to do a lot, so you watch a lot of TV when you have a kid, and
Right.
that's what for Maeve, it was our new baby show. So we finished it up just a few months ago now, and
Awesome.
it's a really fun show. I like these kind of shows a lot that are just fun and make you feel good, because that's what that show sure does.
Yeah. I watched enough episodes to get the appeal of the characters for sure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Apocalypse Win 7 says the obvious answer is Ralph Wiggum's heartfelt star turn as George Washington in the Springfield Elementary School play.
Yeah.
This is a Simpsons reference I don't remember, Matt, if you can believe it.
It's the episode, it's the I Choo Choo Choose You episode. Okay. And him and Lisa are like in the play, and he's like he gives his heartfelt speech, and then he throws the I Choo Choo Choose You letter into the fire, and then he like finishes the speech with an amazing, finale, and it's great. It's great.
I need to go watch this now.
Yeah.
On a more serious note, I love the ballet performance in The Red Shoes. It comes halfway in the film after many scenes of Vicky, an up-and-coming prima ballerina, preparing for her starring role. The big night comes, the curtain is drawn, Vicky stands center stage, and all of a sudden we are no longer watching a stage play. We are witnessing the dance as though it were a dream, delving into Vicky's mind as she brings all of her hopes and struggles and triumphs and fears into her performance. Her red shoes take on a sinister dimension as they have become attached to her and compel her to keep dancing endlessly. Sound familiar to our man Edgar Freemantle and his itchy arm hunger? The sequence perfectly encapsulates the out-of-body experience that the best stage actors can pull off by reaching deep within themselves to bring truth and life to the character, allowing the actor to forget the audience exists until the roar of applause. Much like Ralph Wiggum reached with his lovelorn heartbreak to bring genuine pathos to his portrayal of George Washington.
Yes.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think that is a cool thing that can happen to performers as the stage and the performance fade away, and it's just them and their experience. I think the best performances do that to the audience as well. Like the one of the coolest experiences of stage plays to me is when you forget you're watching a stage play. Like it has hooked you in so much. Like that's like there's such a understood suspension of disbelief in stage performances, right? Because sets are so clearly sets, like it's all manufactured, like there's nothing natural about it at all. But when they're working on you, all that stuff just goes away, and you're just in it, and it's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. It's magic. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was great. Thank you, everyone. Those are some great answers. Really fun question. We appreciate y'all for that one. This next question, it's a little complicated, Matt. We're not doing your favorite instance of, a great example of. We wanted to talk about something that Stephen King does a lot in his books, and that we've talked about a lot throughout the course of the show. But this is one of the biggest examples of it, right? Because this week we were basically told in no uncertain terms that Edgar's daughter Ilse is doomed. She's going to die. And we're curious about when King does not choose to do this. So what is the format we've decided to answer this question or ask this question in, Matt?
We tried to make it succinct and say, how do you think King decides what to spoil and what to hold back? Yeah. As Scott said, this is certainly not the first time this has come up, but and it's an unusual sort of phrasing of a question, because usually we try to make it easy by saying, give us a nice succinct answer, and we do hope that you incline toward being succinct just so that we don't have to read 50 pages.
Yeah,
next
we
week.
we don't have time to do 10 answers if all of the answers are like an essay long. But yeah, I mean, just as succinctly as possible, like when you look at a King book and you see the ways in which sometimes he tells you outright, this X is going to happen, Y is going to happen. And then sometimes, like with the mystery at the center of Duma Key, he holds back and holds back and holds back until the very end. Why are those decisions made? How are those decisions made? Can you think of, examples in which that shine a light on what he might be trying to accomplish with the decision to spoil or hold back? Yeah.
Cool.
Should be fun.
Yep.
But that's it for us this week on Kingslingers. Next week, Duma Key reaches the penultimate episode as we read and discuss chapters 15 through 17 of the novel.
Yeah, and remember, you can reach us via email at kingslingerspod@gmail.com or over on Twitter at kingslingerspod. There is, of course, also the subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia to answer the discussion question or just hang out.
And if you are not already subscribed to Kingslingers, we strongly recommend you do so you never miss an episode and you never miss important news. I don't know if you heard this, Matt. It just came out just today. Scientists have discovered a new species of giant turtle fossil. Do you know what they named it, Matt?
Do you know what they named it? No, I don't know anything about this.
They named it Maturin.
Oh my God. This is amazing. I'm so happy.
They named it Maturin. Yeah.
I love dinosaurs.
Yeah, so please subscribe or you won't get cool bits of information like that, which came from our subreddit, by the way. Someone posted that on our subreddit. That's how I found out about it.
That's incredibly cool.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, and if you like Kingslingers and you want to support us, then please consider donating on Patreon over on patreon.com/doofmedia. As we said earlier, you'll get access to our bonus podcast, Castle Talk, where we talk about the hit TV show Castle Rock. I keep typing Castle Talk into the search bar when I'm trying to watch Castle Rock. It's such a good name. It is.
It's such a good name of a podcast.
It is. And of course, there's also...
I've ever had.
It is. It's definitely the best show title we've ever had. And there's a huge backlog of previous discussions of Stephen King adaptations.
Yeah, definitely. But of course, if you cannot afford to help us out on Patreon right now, that is absolutely okay. You can continue to share this podcast. We know you're doing it. Please keep it up. You can also continue to write us rating and reviews. This week's review comes from Chris121Z, who says, best Stephen King podcast. Matt and Scott are an awesome duo. I just discovered Kingslingers in early 2023 and I'm currently finishing up my trip to the tower with them. I have journeyed to the tower many times on my own, but Matt and Scott still make me go, huh, with their take and opinions and views on what is happening. That's a good, huh? Very excited for their reading of Duma Key, which is one of my favorite books. And Matt and Scott, if you're reading this, I mainly listen to you when I run, and you guys have gotten me through many miles with your interesting and inspiring conversations. And for that, I thank you. Keep up the hard work.
Well, we appreciate that.
Well, Chris, if you're running right now, go faster. A little bit faster.
It's okay. You don't have to go faster.
No, Chris. I know you're tired. You're on mile 7, but
give up, Chris.
Stop it. Thank you so much, Chris. I hope Matt didn't just fucking ruin your run. Probably in the zone, and then like you get that burst of energy. It's like, oh, they're reading my review, and then Matt's like, it's not worth it, Chris. Aren't you tired? Aren't your legs killing you? Just give up. Just sit down.
On your dreams. No, I appreciate that. Yes, I hope that we have made your runs more pleasant. For sure.
That's impressive, though. Like I love podcasts. I have trouble listening to podcasts while running for some reason. I can't do it.
Yeah, me too. And the reason is that I don't ever run.
Okay, well, lately that's also the reason. But like before, when I was running, I need music. I need a beat and a rhythm.
That makes sense.
Just run. Yeah,
makes sense.
All right, folks. We'll see you right back here next week as we continue to make our way through Duma Key. Oh, it's Matt next week. It's gonna be a sad one.
Okay.
Don't worry though. Everyone's fine.
Okay.
We'll see you next week. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.